Hello again. Um, Welcome back to my second lecture in this series about no coders, new term, and how we use generative AI, or in particular large language models, in our work, and with a particular focus for me on education. So I'll start the lecture notes, share my screen, and right. So this is all about Claude. This is the Anthropic large language model, and a lot of universities and enterprises have uh, the uh, the team subscriptions. It's supposed to be very good for collaboration, and I've been evaluating it just from a pro user's perspective. I tried the free version, but it was far too limited for me to evaluate it, so I took a subscription called the Pro subscription, and these are the results. So what we're going to learn in these videos, one lecture, several parts, we're going to look at the different versions of Claude's models and understand why it's really important to get your settings right from the beginning. And we're going to use Anthropic Console, that's free, and I've been using it for ages. This is for the prompt engineering part of things. I referred to it already in lecture one, which focused on the introductory concepts of prompt and context engineering. And now we're going to see Anthropic Console in practice. Then one of the disadvantages of Claude is its workspace gets very cluttered up, and I really don't like that. I'm the sort of person who needs to arrange my cups in the cupboard with the handles all in the right direction and things like that. Pencils in decreasing order of magnitude on my desktop here. So, you know, if you that type of control freak, how do you manage your workflow? And projects are a good way to do that. Then we're going to look at the analysis tools and see if they really do what they say they do. In particular, looking at data analysis in a CSV file and a mathematical problem, just straight coding. And finally, we're going to be creating and using all the different types of artifacts, which are like the custom built LLMs that you can make in Claude. So this is the introduction and looking at the different models and the settings before you actually begin work in Claude. So Claude is actually named after Claude Shannon of the entropy fame, you know, the Shannon entropy, which measures uncertainty. And I guess it's because large language models process language by making probabilistic predictions in an uncertain environment. That's where the name comes from, Claude. Claude actually has some pretty good ethical values, which is why I think that a lot of enterprises and universities have subscribed to it. In particular, it's got its own constitution. It doesn't blindly just rely on people to give a thumbs up, thumbs down. I mean, when they were evaluating GPT-5, for ages I was getting two versions and I had to prefer this version or that version. That was when OpenAI were testing GPT-5. But Claude doesn't do that. It evaluates its own responses against its own ethics. So the Constitution is a list of rules like you must never generate harmful advice. For instance, just recently, they changed the Constitution to add rules about avoiding anything to do with developing nuclear weapons or chemical weapons or things like that. And Claude is still trained on large data sets, just like every large language model. But apparently it's better aligned with human goals. And that actually is really quite important. I recently saw Jeff Hinton's really scary interview on the development of artificial general intelligence. that's the sort of
they call you the godfather of AI. So what would you be saying to people about their career prospects in a world of superintelligence?
Soon to be a plumber.
Really? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna come up with Geoffrey Hinton is the Nobel Prize winning pioneer.
Okay, so back here. Yeah, I watched that video. And there were quite a few others from the same interviewer, which are really focused on the risks of this exponentially fast development of artificial intelligence and what it will mean not just for jobs, but for the future of economic powers and wars. Maybe don't watch it, it's quite scary. Anyway, so let's look at Claude's model. I said I tried the free version, that's the Sonnet. And they have earlier versions called Haiku. They're all named after different types of literary works, like a sonnet and a haiku, both poems, and opus is a sort of great work. Now, the context window, remember from lecture 1? Context window is measured in tokens, and it's basically how the large language model fakes having a memory. So a token is a bit of a word. So, for example, 1 million tokens is about 750,000 English words. And so the context window of Sonnet 4 is 1 million tokens, so 750,000 words, which is a lot. But when you think that you put in a prompt and then you get a response in Claude, it's often quite verbose. And then you put in another prompt, but along with that prompt, everything previously in the conversation goes in, because otherwise it can't remember. So it keeps stacking up. The longer the conversation, the more is being wrapped up and sent with just a short prompt. And so the context window would drop out stuff from the beginning and forget, and then the whole conversation can go awry. There are ways of getting around that. I talked about them in my first lecture, so I won't go over it now. And then there's a limit to the number of messages that can be sent and received. And it depends on how congested the model is. If lots of people are using it, then the limit will be lower. And that's quite restricted on Opus 4 as well. I don't get on very well with Opus 4. I think that if you have the API integration, Opus 4 would be a lot better. But the Pro sub for Opus 4, I've used Sonnet most of the time. You get a high message limit, and in the rate limit, well, like the message limit, so every 5 hours, you've got a sort of 5-hour rolling window for the rate limit. And it's like a rate limit is like a speed limit. It controls the number of messages in the most recent 5-hour window that you can send and receive. And that's really low, I found on Sonnet 4, whereas I didn't have a problem with the Pro version. It's the free version. Temperature control. Remember, temperature controls the variability of response. I mean, there are some things that have like 0 temperature, which means you always get the same deterministic response, but others with very high temperature means that you put in the same prompt and then you put it in again, and you get quite a different response. It's very stochastic. And that's only available if you have the API integration, which I'm not looking at the moment because that's not under the Pro subscription. I'm the sort of person who just wants to pay $20 a month, thank you. Whereas API is much more for developers, IT people. It's a pay-as-you-go. It depends on your token usage. And it's very good if you want to sort of plumb Claude into an Excel spreadsheet, or even into your Canvas or learning management system module. And also it batch processes. I'm old enough to remember the days when my first code, because I used to be a coder, and I coded on cards, punch cards, when I was at school. And they were sent off to a computer physically, and got them back a couple of days later. Or the VAXs, where you'd have to batch your your commands. And that's what API does, basically. But I'm not going to go into that. All right, and then projects are useful because, as I said, trying to keep everything in one place and keep your workspace tidy. And also you can set project instructions, which are separate from the general settings. And then there are all these different tools, which are only limited availability for. Okay, so now where's my recording? Because I've got a Tesco delivery. So let's just ask that, go here, stop and pause. And where's my recording? Hang on. I don't want to lose this. Go here. Oh, sorry about that. Let me share my screen again. Sharing my screen. Hope I am. And pause it and resume. There we are. I am screen sharing, it says. Can't see myself anymore, but I presume I'm screen sharing. Right, let's hope this works. So we just went through temperature, yeah, and API integration. Now the tools, there's a web search tool, at least not in that Haiku one. The Haiku 3.5 that's available is very, very fast, but it's limited to the data it was trained on, which was before Claude 4. So it doesn't even know that Claude 4 exists because it doesn't have web access. So there is a web search, but you very often find that it says it can't access that URL and so forth. So I don't find it as good as, well, I don't find many things as good as GPT-5 now, as we shall see as we progress through this lecture. But that's just from my personal perspective. Anyway, so it can deal with most file formats. It says it can deal with Excel workbooks, but it can't really. We'll get to that later. And even processing CSV files is not great. And its image processing capabilities, we'll test all these and I'll show you. So it's got this analysis tool. It's supposed to handle complex maths and data analysis. And we're going to be testing that as we go through this lecture. It converts everything to JavaScript, you see. So it's very, very good at producing code, produces code all the time, but actually specific outputs rather than code, not so good. And that just runs in a browser. But if you want, you can download Claude code and install it on your hard drive and then run it in the command line. But that's for developers, not for people like us. And anyway, you can, it's still a natural language program. So, you don't, developers don't actually have to write JavaScript or anything like that. They can just put in natural language and Claude will convert it. And it's designed for making these things called AI agents, which you may or may not have heard of, but these agents are things that take over the entire job and do everything from start to finish, and they take over your machine. We'll be looking at those in the next lecture, as well as custom-built LLMs. And the other tool is for generating artifacts. So generates code in Python, JavaScript, in most software languages, no problem. But as I said, it's very good at code and it can create an artifact that is code that you can put elsewhere. It can also create these nice little mini apps, games or visualizations, quizzes, calculators, and some of those are really good actually. And it also can make documents or other things, like I've been using Claude to make latex code for my Beamer slides for basic, just starting off a lecture and then I work on it. But just the basic stuff, Claude's actually quite good at making a good start on that, or tables and charts, these sorts of things. Now, it's really important, right from the word go, to go into settings down the bottom and set your profile. And this is a picture of what I did. and it's still in beta mode. A lot of things seem to be in beta mode, to be honest. And your preferences will apply to all conversations. So this is really good because everything it tells me is in the context of my personal preferences. So before we go to the next part, let me just go into Claude and show you my settings in more detail. So here we are on Claude, and here I am, Carol Alexander, my Pro plan. And here are settings. And as you can see, I got Anthropic Console to help me with this, as I do most of my prompts, because this is like a prompt, but it just stays there all the time. It tells Claude who I am, what I'm interested in, my background. I'm not a coder. What I'm focusing on at the moment, my learning goals. And I've been using Claude and GPT to teach me about how to use Claude and GPT. Basically that. And then I want to integrate AI tools into my students' assessments, into their teaching, into their learning, so that my students will be very AI literate when they graduate, and so they'll be able to get a job, unlike many other people in this environment. And I want to incorporate Claude, Perplexity, GPT-5, Notebook LLM into all of those, gradually into my teaching. How I like to communicate. I want an advanced undergraduate, graduate level. I wish this Grammarly thing would really, really dislike Grammarly. Can I turn it off? Yes, from now on. Whew, good. Real world industry context, things like that. Response style. Oh yeah, I had to add this because, as we shall see, Claude chooses its own titles. That's the third part of this this lecture, is about the mess that Claude makes of your workspace. So things like asking questions to clarify, prompts before execution, things like that. So at the beginning of every conversation, it's going to be referring to this, but I do find that it does tend to forget some of these things over time. So I wonder whether the profile does drop out of the context window. That is 1 million tokens. Okay, so now let me finish this video because I was interrupted. Hopefully I can use it, but who knows, may not be able to. Bye for now.